I knew it. I really didn't want to meet that employee again, but from what I had experienced, she was the only one I had met before Fujiyoshi. So avoiding her was probably wasn't a great idea. Her attitude was shit, but at least she did what I asked. Though I really didn't want to drive down all that unpaved road again. Once again, she greeted her customer in borderline insane way. It actually made me feel kind of relieved. I wanted to believe that was just some kind of trick of the mind. It was just like before. To her, I was just some unknowing late-night customer. Oh well, I'd buy what I wanted. I'll take these. No reason. Yasumizu was just desperately poor and it had me worried. What was her problem? I was a customer. This much stuff she had to use the register. Still rambling, she stated, scanning the barcodes. When she was done, I paid and asked, I want to get to the nearest settlement. Do you have a map I could look at? Please, I need it. She went through the staff door. I knew it. Mm-hmm. But that's just a forest, isn't it? I knew that it was. There wasn't even a paved road there. Why'd she recommend the road anyways? If I crashed and died, it'd be homicide by no doubt. That wasn't a lie. It wasn't weird for Yasumizu not to be on the map. It was nearly abandoned settlement in the middle of nowhere. Why did she know about it? Why did she live in Kamifujiyoshi or something? It sounds like it'd be bad for my bike. What about this place? Fujiyoshi. Can I write that down? Where's the other closest towns? Man, I couldn't make any sense of the local distance measures. Oh, actually consideration, though. It was hard to be grateful. She was the one who pointed me in the direction of that shitty in the first place. Turning back, huh? I'll think about it. Thank you. Oh, by the way, you got an interesting local drinks. I didn't see any in the drink aisle. I just thought you might have something in the back. Could you at least check? Seriously? She brought me a 500cc bottle with a black liquid inside. The label looked written by hand and said, Wild Plant Cola. I expected nothing and got something huge. This place was amazing. Oh, sorry, but I got quite a lot of stuff. Do you have a rubber rope I could hang on my bike so I can hold it all? I'd be happy if you just looked. Seriously? Well, since we've come this far, I have a list here. Think you can see if you have anything on it? Are you saying you kill me? Please, I just want you to have a look. Thanks. What the hell is this place? It felt like she was about to kill me, but I successfully came out with pretty much all I needed. Then I just made a run for it. I opened up the weird wild plant cola. Looking up at the noisy light trap above, I took a sip. It was cool, intense. I had a strange grassy flavor. It wasn't too bad at all. I expected something totally gross, but it was actually a legit drink. Slightly disappointed, I looked at the ingredients. Cola, plant extract. Hold on, cola as an ingredient? Did they really just buy cola and mix it in? And plant extract? Could that be anything from fruits to poisonous plants? What the hell was this? Well, was this even safe to drink? Well, at least it tasted good. It was probably smart to just turn around and drive away. Entering Fujiyoshi means death. Turn back. Perhaps that was just what the loops were trying to tell me. Maybe I ought to listen. But was it really that easy? I had no real grounds for this, but if the cause of this strange phenomenon was somewhere in the village, so I couldn't break out of the loop until I saw the mystery behind it. What would happen if I left then? Would I go on and live the rest of my days only to die and come back here? Would I return to the youth after years of being old? That part didn't sound half bad actually, but was it really something I could just accept so easily? This was just speculation. But what if I actually hadn't moved an inch from the mountain pass? Was everything from then, now, and until death just an fever dream, and dying again would just bring me back here? If that's how it was, everything I do with my life from this point onward would be meaningless. Maybe I really should move on, only after taking care of whatever was binding me. Also, how could I leave something so strange, unnatural, and incomprehensible and just return to the city? As I finished my drink, I made my decision. I'd return there, and I'd face that tragedy again. Of course, I was curious about this looping phenomenon. I did recall what I thought during my final moments. It was something like, if only I'd handled this better. For better or worse, this weird looping phenomenon had given me a chance to do just that. If I went all about this a bit better, perhaps I could get a better ending. Haisako, Konzo, Yushiyasu Orobi, the old man, Chimika Rikako, Kuri Orobi, Yikonana, and Meko. Hell, even Yasunaka Orobi and Tei Sakaaki and Haru were just victims of strange superstition. But I, Haruki, could not delude myself. I was no hero. I had no powers, no convictions. I was just a delinquent. My motivations here was a sense of perfectionism, and I was annoyed at how many mistakes I had made the first time. Plus, there was a certain attraction I felt towards the unknown. It was an urge fundamental to my being. I'd be risking my life on its behalf. I wasn't about to pretend I was acting for the sake of others here. Although Chimizawa, though she hated her childhood name, it reminded me the part of who she was. I wanted to keep that from being tarnished with blood. That motive was perverse, forceful, selfish, lustful, filthy. I couldn't let myself forget any of that. I remembered the names of those I'd meet, and what I had to do. I turned the key, opened the throttle, pushed the button, connected. I went, started, turned, take a right.
渡れ。最初の分岐のとこに大岩があっから、そこを右折して、あとは直線。
I quickly came across it. I could clearly remember this overpass. The large border wasn't news to me either, but I wouldn't take that to this route this time. I just kept on driving, not lowering my speed for a moment. Full speed ahead. I drove on the winning mountain path. Strangely enough, my fatigue through present wasn't too bad, and my head was perfectly clear. I knew which route to take without even looking at the copy of my map. Maybe I'd driven through here before. Perhaps this wasn't the first choice I'd made, but one of many. I couldn't be sure, but since my memories were so incomplete nothing was certain. Still, they'd be an asset in the fight ahead. I could no longer see the moon. The rain would begin soon. Oh, a house. My time estimated was more or less right. After 30 or so minutes, I began seeing houses between the hills and the trees. I eventually left the forest and could see as well as one could in the middle of the night. It was already raining, and I knew it'd only get worse if I had to do something before that happened. There were next to no city lights, and not a single house I could see was lit up either. However, unlike Yasumizu, the destitute place where most of the houses had been built from wood, the houses here were modern. The road was well paved too. I could even see some bus stops and vending machines, deciding that this was modern Japan. Even if they had an inn or something, I doubt they accept someone barging in so late. Some would think that this was a way for me to at least get a roof over my head, but I knew that was just a city dweller's conception. Same went for the idea that royal folks were nice enough to let you stay if you just asked nicely. This was just pure delusion. In actuality, Boo Royals areas were subject to local legends and traditions, with many of the residents believing goods, peaceful lives were only possible thanks to their protection. Of course, that wasn't always wrong, but there was also the reason why many royal people were so cold to outsiders. Hell, this was a village so beyond times it had a settlement for the sides, which they discriminated against so badly. This place was probably even more insular than your average royal village. They wouldn't take kindly to outsiders like me. Probably be wary the entire time I stayed here. I could only imagine how strongly they'd react if some brown-haired man suddenly drove in on a bike. Was I some sort of idiot? Like the city boy I was, I just went in there thinking it's all just work out. Now caught up in the attention of a police officer. Well, I doubted he'd arrest me or anything, but the fact that there was some weirdo who invaded the village in the middle of the night would spread among the people here in less than a day. Now I'd be treated like a criminal if I walked and talked to anyone here. The officer looked middle-aged, but what stood out about him was the fact that he seemed like the most generic meathead old man from the countryside. He told me to sit down and wait until he came back. I only imagined the chewing out I was in for. Still, I was pretty sure that passing Kamifujiyoshi was one of the main conditions here. I could clearly remember. I had memories of this. Came here through the normal route, and they weren't considered a problem. They die on the first day of the feast, but that wasn't because they were outsiders. They just violated the feast's rules. They either hadn't cleansed themselves, sheltered all alone, or dreamed. My assumption was that before it all happened, they stayed at an inn, Kamifujiyoshi. They'd only come to Yasumizu on the day for the sake of an article. Unfortunately for them, the mist came and the landslide happened, making it impossible for them to go back. Then everyone started sheltering and no one came to help them. Forget the outsiders, old man Konzo, and I'll check the other places. Stop wasting time and go back to yours. Yeah, even Takumi-san had tried to cut me off because I was an outsider. Giving me a way to survive, however improvised, was probably a huge risk for Chimi. I had to keep that in mind. Back to the journalist, though. They ended up abandoned in the village plaza, clueless about what was happening. What had they done, then? They'd obviously chosen to spend the night in the van. I had no idea how Hashimoto-shi and Memiya-san fit in there together, But since they hadn't slept alone, they'd broken the shelter's rule. Hell, I wasn't sure if the van was a valid source of shelter to begin with. That was probably why Hashimoto's body was found at the van, since Hasako Mamaya had probably roamed. On that night, she'd broken the dream rule. I had no idea she'd gone outside, but it could have been something simple, such as nature calling or search for a better place to sleep. Of course, as a journalist, she might have smelled the scoop in the Umius village, gone out to gather info. Not to mention they couldn't have taken a bath in their situation. They obviously hadn't cleansed themselves. So she died at the hands of that thing. Now about what happened to me. I died once leaving the outdoor toilet. Dying because I had gone outside was understandable, but honestly I wasn't sure if the toilet even counted as inside. I bet that it didn't. Of course I hadn't bathed or slept, so I broke all the rules. And yet I survived. What made my situation different then? It was whether I'd been found by that thing or not. Upon seeing me, it recognized me as a rule breaker and executed me. But when it hadn't found me, I survived despite breaking all the rules. It meant that sheltering law was simply a method meant to keep the werewolf-like thing from finding you. The time I'd survived, it tried to force its way in, but it failed. Nothing had happened to me because I was locked in, but if the lock was broken or something, I'd have been found and killed easily. Basically, you could avoid the monster by just properly locking yourself in somewhere. Miko was proof of that. She was a lost child who come from the hated Saranaga, but she survived all the way up to the end without succumbing to the corruption. That meant the important thing there was to get a lockable residence in Yasumizu with a bath. And that was exactly why arriving at the normal route was necessary. If I'd come from Saranaga again, most of the inhabitants would treat me with distrust. But if I was a person who arrived from Kamifujiyoshi for whatever reason, to be willing to accommodate, Meiko was probably only given a place because she was young, because Rakiko Amatsu had protected her. I couldn't expect similar treatment. Gave a house to Meiko, to a small child like her, that made it seem like she knew the myths and the feats would come. I'd think more on that later though. It could be that she'd given her a key right after the myths. If I could be like Meiko and get a proper place I could stay in, I'd have the right to participate in the feasts. I'd be able to listen to the talks myself instead of relying on Chimi. Also, learn much more about the feasts. It means a lot, considering that some people there, especially the elders, wouldn't want to talk about Yasumizu's problems. A part of me wanted to avoid another tragedy, but a part of me wanted to find out what was behind the mystery, equally strong. Now monster, that thing allowed me to still be here. This looping phenomenon were the main mysteries here. Though I did have some questions about the monster. It hadn't found me when I locked myself in the toilet. It was probably just curious why it was locked. Couldn't a monster with a wolf head just track me by scent? Why did it half-ass the job? Its failure to eliminate me only made the inhabitants more suspicious of me. There were no feast laws regarding outsiders. That was why it was the best for us just not to be present. Looking at the current laws, those who didn't have a place to stay were outsiders and they had to be removed because of that. The system worked fine for the most part, but there was me, a proper branch. If that monster meted out of the corruption, it was on the side of Great Lord Shinai. As such, it should have used some divine power or whatever to address the problem. Also, it seemed to me that they had the power to unlock doors. Man, this was getting confusing. Last time, the wolves were Yasunaga, Orobi, and Te Yamaaki. According to legend, they had been replaced by wolves who'd come back from the dead, but their story was completely different. They said that they were normal people who had wolves as their guardians. That meant that the thing couldn't have been Yasunaga-kun or Tae-san. It was more like an ancient of the same side as whatever granted them their powers. I had no idea why they were granting the protection of the guardians, but from what I could tell, guardians were like fragments of divine power. If they were on the same side as the ones who granted those powers, couldn't you just use the unlocking power whenever you wanted? Why would a supernatural being make such a careless mistake? Any assumptions made beyond this point would just be grasping at straws and bias my observation. I'd just stop here for now. Anyways, it was imperative I got myself a place to stay. What was I doing here anyways? I've been theorizing about this and that for almost a half an hour now. Dawn was close. I had a little over 10 hours until the mist came, and I had to find a secure place to stay within that time. That was hard to begin with, but as things stood out, it was outright impossible. Did I have to run away? What if I just ran to Yasumizu, said I came from Kamifujiyoshi like it was no big deal, and asked them to let me live there? Well, they had enough imagination to suspect me. I definitely needed someone from Kamifujiyoshi to vouch for me, and for that I had to find something that could turn this around. I looked around the police box. I tidied decks a rotary phone. This felt like the place of an officer from the mid-20s. There were wanted posters on the walls. They caught that guy. One of the men even had the look of a criminal. That one. A serial killer, huh? It was possible that he was lurking in the area. That was pretty freaky. Finally, I heard some noise. The door opened and the officer returned. I should have ran? He wasn't one to mess around. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. Haruki Fusashi, or Haru from sun, and Aki from Moje for Haruaki, and Fusa from workshop, and Ishi from stone for Ishi. Rude. Yes, I am. It's like anyone weird was from Tokyo to them. Some serious stereotyping there. He was right though. 24. I'm a student. I just drove on the road at night and this was so unfair. I just wanted to talk back so badly. He lowered his voice a bit. That was the main matter here, and how he treated me would change depending on my answer. What angle did I have to take? I went on a bike trip and lost my way. I just told him the truth. There was nothing shady about that. Telling him some cheap lie would only make him suspicious. He put on a threatening tone. I really wish he didn't stare at me like that. Did he expect me to fall for him? Really, I had been wandering around the mountains for hours, or finding a convenience store. An employee told me about this place.
コンビニ勧めたかここに来いと。
She hadn't told me to go to Kami Fujiyoshi, but she had told me about Yasumizu. I'd just tell the truth until the end. She told me about a settlement in the mountains that's not even on the map. I kindly refused, and then she told me about here.
そりゃ奇妙な話だな。
Is there a settlement like that?
さあ、知らん。
That was clearly an act. He looked away. Man, this guy was
まあ、わ
on.
かった。本当に何でもないんだな。
Yes.
そうか。ま、こんな夜中に出歩いて疑われるようなことはもうせんようにな。
I'd have appreciated an apology for treating me with such suspicion, but I'd have more important things to talk about. Would you mind if I spent the night here and...
よし、道を教えてやろ
Huh? But I'm so tired.
う。そう言っとる間は大丈夫だ。
My fuel is running low.
俺の原付の分けてやろう。
I don't feel so good.
そうか。早く行った方がいいな。
Is something going on here?
何もない。
He wasn't even looking into my eyes as he said that. He got on his scooter, saw me off until the crossroads. Man, what a great guy. I didn't expect him to go this far. Yeah, right. Why the hell did he want me out so badly? Well, at least the rain stopped. It's the only good thing about this. Was this some special time of the year when the presence of the outsider was bad? Was it worth chasing me out even if it seemed unnatural? That seemed like a decent guess. Even if the mist hadn't shown up for decades now, if the legends were deeply rooted in local culture, there would still be related traditions alive. Or maybe he was sure something bad was gonna happen. Was he on the side that make it happen too? Did they have a means to create such a dense mist? Mist happened when the air cooled and the water vapor in the air couldn't stay gaseous. It's basically small water droplets. The mechanism by which they worked could easily be replicated in a lab. They even did it on educational TV, though I found it hard to believe they could only reproduce a scale vast enough to hide an entire settlement. They'd need some device that no doubt be large and heavy, and it'd have to be in the Saranaga Rapids of all places, though only been to Saranaga when I couldn't see anything, either because it was out at night or misty. If the mist was made by some huge machine put there by Kami Fujiyoshi people, I'd be really pissed to say the least. Though Takumi-san did say he had to pick up corpses from Saranaga. Even if it was abandoned ground, it wasn't likely they could just install a device like that without anyone noticing. That was how it was in some novel, wasn't it? The corpse was there to begin with, but they just couldn't perceive it. I'd had to like to believe in something like a tad bit more realistic. In the end, I had to keep going towards the area called Kajihara. Maybe I'd get the rest there. If I returned the next day, the cop would surely snap at me. Would I even go back? The fatigue was getting the better of me. I knew it was a good idea to stop, but no, I actually didn't know it. I wasn't able to think straight. Miss. Now, was it artificial? No, that didn't make sense. My mind was hazy. I could no longer make sense of anything. Nice house, sir. Number 5. You can view it in the keyless. It is unlocked by the key is represented. Did I just die? Oh my gosh. I am really good at dying. Holy balls. I tried. I tried. It's probably smart to just turn around and drive away. Entering Fujiyoshi means death, turning back. Perhaps that was the loop that we were trying to tell me. Maybe I ought to listen. But was it really that easy? I had no grounds for this. Perhaps I couldn't break the loop behind. Okay. So basically, I'm going to. Let's turn back this time. Until I finished my drink, the thing guiding me was a good sense. Otherwise, what a weird experience that was. It made a good campfire story once I made it back to where I belonged. I pushed aside my sense that something wasn't right, my anxiety, my fear. There was another way to look at this. I could try and see whether ignoring it all, running away would actually work. After all, this might end up being the only way to solve the problem. I turned the key, opened the door, pushed the signal to the left, and I went straight, starting with the left turn. In a way, I'd go back to the mountain path. I had enough of this ride. I'd return to civilization, eat some normal food, get some decent sleep, and live my boring everyday life. Just recognizing how precious those things were was far more than enough for me. That made this trip worth it. A dense mist drifted into the view. Well, I died already. No. Alright, so turning back kills me. Entering Fujiyoshi through the normal route doesn't work, so I just have to pass by Fujiyoshi. As I finished my drink, the idea I had was barely different from just turning around and leaving. Maybe I could just pass it by. It was curious what would happen if I ignored Yasumizu Fujiyoshi and the clerk's warning and drove past on. Why would anything happen? I just continued down the road, right? Why did I feel so easy then? After thinking for a moment, I had arrived at a mindset of eliminating whatever the option seemed wrong. My guess was that this wouldn't take care of the root of the problem, but I was the type who wouldn't believe that until I tried it myself. I turned the key, opened the throttle, pushed the signal to the left, and clutched I went starting with a right turn. Then it tensed the mountain path for a while. It didn't feel like I was falling asleep. I was definitely becoming more and more exhausted, both mentally and physically. Even this jacket, the force of the wind going by, doing a number on my body, especially as I kept onward for over an hour. I did, however, see a sign above my head that said Fujiyoshi. As I decided just to pass it by, never coming close to Kami Fujiyoshi or Yasumizu. Now I just passed the mountain and reached the town I was told about. Perhaps I should have been more suspicious of the fact that I had stopped acting my heart after all. Maybe it was just so tired I couldn't even make such decisions. I could only remember noticing a strange dense mist surrounding me, but that was back when my brain was lost all capacity for premonition or judgment. And I died. Nice. A house. Okay. So basically, what am I gonna get at here? I'm that this guy is not gonna let me go. I had to say I was followed after your girlfriend. Okay, cool. I had an idea. Well, officer,
なんだいえ、
what? Say it. I heard that the girl I dedicated my heart to live somewhere around here, so I came looking for her. He acted like he didn't care, but he was definitely interested. Here in human society, love stories were a supreme form of entertainment and was a good excuse for doing all sorts of weird things. Anything was possible when a guy or girl was involved.
そりゃあ、そうは言うても、ここいらで東京行っとったもんがおったとは聞かんぞ。
We met somewhere else. When I went to Karuizawa to recover from the after effects of the bird flu. And so I wove for him a dramatically majestic story of how I'd grown close to a woman I dedicated my life to. Cops was really into it. He looked like he didn't care at first, but by time I got to the part where she first invited me into her house and displayed like a childlike enthusiasm. Eventually we became true lovers. She said she couldn't throw away her childhood home, which led to a tearful goodbye. At that point, the cop was fully invested in the girl returning back home.
それで君は都会を捨ててこっち来る決意をしたと。はあ、はあ。
He smiled like he was about to pat me. I definitely captured his heart.
しかし、そんな若い娘おったか？なんつ
There
う
it
ことだ。
was.
君のフィアンセは。
That wasn't a problem for me. I had a perfect name in mind. Name was Chimi Sarazawa. Get out, huh?
帰れ。今すぐ出てけ。すぐ。
He stood up and approached me so menacingly I felt like he was about to attack me. In the end, he jumped on his scooter and led me to some crossroads, clearly intended on getting me as far away from Fujiyoshi as possible. I was now heading towards the so-called Kachihara era. The rain had already stopped, but it was tiring to drive along the still slick asphalt. I knew Chimi, Fujiyoshi were distant, to say at least, and since she'd been out of the village, they couldn't have known each other. She's been up to. I thought she'd make my story more believable. What the hell was that reaction? The thing that set him off was Chimi's name. She told me she was almost killed someone with a bat. Was her repetition that bad? Even if it was that the right reaction to make? You'd expect something like, I really think you shouldn't. And the like, was it because she was from Yasumizu? That makes sense. If they didn't want outsiders to know about Yasumizu, it'd make sense for them to chase away anyone coming to meet her. But that only made them look more suspicious. Anyways, what now? Maybe I tried coming back again after getting some rest. But from what I could tell, entering Yasumizu from Kimi Fujiyoshi wouldn't be as easy as I first thought. The fatigue was getting the better of me. I knew it was a good idea to stop, but I actually didn't know it. Miss, now, was it artificial? No, that didn't make sense. My mind was hazy and I could no longer make sense of anything. Taboo name. All right, let's go. What is it to you, huh? This is Japan. We're free to go wherever we want. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. I'm tired of dying. Damn it. I know I come back, but dying really hurts. I know this route's a dead end too. What's next then? You want me to dance naked? Some taste you got there. Just shut up and let me stay here. then go to Yamesu and make it look normal.
いやー暴れ出した。なんだこいつ。もしもしもしもし。了解。射殺し。
Nice! And thus I died again. Berserk. Let's go, I died again. Game over. I'm really good at doing this.
やら何やらの準備をしといてくれ。
The road wasn't wide, but I stopped my bike. Then I flipped out the kickstand and locked it in place. After opening up the toolbox under the seat, I hid my license, ID, and business card. Anything related to me, basically inside. Kami Fujiyoshi was just ahead. If I came in like that, the officer would surely catch me and then chase me away. I had to find another way to convince that old man to let me stay. I reached into the bag of stuff I bought in the convenience store and took something out. It was a cup of refined steak. I quickly gulped it down. It's so bad. Cheap or not, it just chugging steak like this was plain disrespectful. No trying this at home, kids. Not that kids could drink anyways. Unfortunately, my life and fate, whatever were on the line here. Next cup. Third cup. 4.
ああ。なんだよ、おい兄ちゃん。酔っ払いか。見ねえ面だな。
Yep, yep.
うわ、酒くせ。どっから来た。こんな夜中によ。
Yep.
ああ、もう分かった分かった。とりあえず駐在所来い。
Yeah, I realize this man always let me go as long as I wish to go for dreaming. Then it was best to just not talk at all and come all drunk. Yeah. Woo, woohoo.
うるせえなバカ。近所迷惑だ。
Ugh. Where was I? My head, I hurt all over. Tatami and a blanket, so he really let me spend the night here, just as I planned. The officer was actually a nice guy. Not like I couldn't tell. He was just rough and simple. Basically, the way to get around him was to get there was nothing more than met the
お
eye.
お、兄ちゃん。起きたか。ちょっと話聞かせてもらうぞ。
Alright, it was time.
要するに、金もねえ、仕事も見つからねえ、部屋は追出されて、女にも逃げられて、山入って死のうとして酒かっくらったが、死にきれなかったっつんだな。
Yes.
東京っつうのは地獄だな。
Yes. After I spent an hour lying about myself, the officer looked at me with a sympathetic
ま
expression.
あ、そんなチャラチャラした格好とかせずに、もっと真面目にすりゃよかったのかもしれねえかな。
Yes, I'll think about it. Basically, I didn't talk unless unprompted, nor did I argue with him. This guy was definitely good-natured, but he was also rough around the edges, chatty or a bit preachy in this case. I just kind of let him set the pace. I was about to ask him something outrageous after all. I needed to be completely on board with the story. The front door was made of glass, and when people passed me on the farm of the road, they all gave me funny looks. It was early in the morning, but the people Kami Fujiyoshi already aware and concerned about my presence and outsider.
死ぬのは良くないわな。
Yes, I was too scared to die even when drunk.
あんまそんな感じに見えなかったけどよ。
Sometimes you're so scared you can't help but laugh.
そんなもんかもしれんな。そんで、これからどうすんだ？
I paused to make it seem like I was hesitating. I wanted to make a fresh start, but I got nowhere else to go. I faked some tears and quivered as I spoke.
宮崎に嫁の実家があっからよ。小さい工場だが、やってみっか。
Huh? Your wife is from
お
Kisu?
うよ。我慢強いいい女だ。
How'd you meet
そ
her?
れがよ、俺がまだ20歳の頃。
And so he began his grandiosity, an hour-long talk about his youthful romance. The words karma and a cursed rebound came to mind. Apparently he wasn't a Fujiyoshi inhabitant art at the start. He and his wife were only living here in the sticks because he was a local officer. And that said wife, a plump, pleasant woman, came out and served us tea, so they really were living here. Eventually they got so lovey-dovey it was hard for me to talk. I instead considered what to do next. I mean, this made it really hard for me to say I wanted to make a fresh start. Even when his wife suggested I went to work for her family back in Kishu, such nice people, exactly the type that get swindled. That sounds great, but this place is nice too, isn't it? There's a lot of nature. I think I could take it easy
あ
here.
ら不便なだけよ。それにうちの周りも山だらけだし。
I have a feeling like I was brought here for a purpose, like maybe I'd meet someone.
そうね、そうね。あたしらと縁ができたものね。
Damn, she was a tough one. This is the first time anyone has been so nice to me.
あらあらあら。まあまあ、泣かないで。
I want to pay you back. Can I work somewhere in this village?
あ
I got to the heart of the matter, but the guy didn't look aesthetic. His wife left the room, leaving behind the two of us in an awkward
あ、やめ
silence.
た方がいいぞ。
Huh?
いや、こんな村、老人ばっかだし、特産物もねえしな。まあ、手伝いくらいならあるかもしれねえが。
That's good enough for me. I don't even need any money.
そうは言っても、ちょっと行けば町があるからよ。
I want to work here.
あ、いや、なんだ？ちょっとばかり、ここの連中は変わってっからな。
He went and said it. Listening to his story had made me guess that he wasn't under Fujiyoshi's sway to the degree others were. They lived here for 20 years, but in some small ways they were still outsiders. The bitterness in his expression was more than enough to give me that impression. Strange.
ああ、いや、なんでもね。まあ、悪いことは言わん。なんか別の方法を。
Suddenly I heard a sound coming from outside. It was a town broadcast. Some speakers somewhere in the village were playing some unclear music, and it was...
ああ、驚いたか。7時の合図だ。
Yeah, I heard this music back in Yasumizu. It was both a children's song, a playground singing game. Jimmy said it was called The Prayer of Shinai. So it was a song revering the great Lord Shinai. But from what I remember, it was about the feast of the Yomi Purge. That's a strange melody.
ああ、なんつったかな。この村に昔からある曲なんだってよ。
So the village as a whole had inherited it. There wasn't anything strange about that, really. Even if its roots were a cruel legend, the passage of time would eventually erode said legend's significance. Just introduce something like a wolf pulling festival and it would be nothing more than a decent song to serve as a morning alarm for the village. That was only true if the legend meaning had been forgotten. What happened next was shocking, even though someone had their suspicions about the nature of this place. One by one, people started coming out of their homes, forming a crowd. The road before the officer was full of people traveling from right to left. Where had this many people come from? I couldn't get any good looks at their expressions, but they were all their heads despondently. Were they just tired? What's going on?
三場に向かってんだ。
Watering hole?
飯屋のことよ。ここの連中はみんな3食飯屋で食うから。
That was it. That's a bit weird.
ああ。なんでも昔、山を焼くとかで火を使っちゃならんという話があって、それに隠れて火を焚いたのが水場らしい。だから今でも自宅では皆飯を作らんで、水場で飯を食う。そんで、樋口んところが皆の胃袋を握って、
うちがどうかしましたか？
The door suddenly opened up. I heard a soft voice I didn't recognize. Surprised the officer, I turned around. It was a man in a suit, average build. His face was round, and he looked a bit of shy of middle age.
なんでもねえですよ、樋口さん。
It turned out he was a member of one of the 4 head families here. That was the family Kuri Orobi had married into, but when her husband had died, she was sent to Yamitsumi-zu. That means that this man was related to Yasunaga-kun and Yoshitsugu-kun. I couldn't see a resemblance. It was definitely intriguing, though. Fujiyoshi had a tradition of using the water hole to feed themselves, and if the Higuchi family was in charge of it, that gave them the influential position. People needed food to stay alive, and if they didn't have any way to cook, they wouldn't even consider making food for themselves. I could only imagine the power of a family could have if it was in charge of all the local food and drink. Kori Orobi-san was in charge of the dining hall too. Her relations to the Higuchi probably had something to do with that. Perhaps she had been sent there to fulfill that role. But if that was the case, the idea that Yasumizu had been completely abandoned wasn't true at all. It meant that Kami Fujiyoshi was actually controlling what went on there.
みんなが噂していましたよ。こちらは？
ああ、臭いしっちゅうもんです。何やらいろいろ苦労して、死のうってここいらまで流れてきたと。
へえ、それはさぞご苦労されたのでしょ
う。And I think that's where we're gonna stop. I had died many times. There is a new face. A face that doesn't look like anybody else's. I guess it kind of looks like Yasunaga's hair, kind of, but not really. Who knows? But he has glasses. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one.